Picture this. You're in a heated discussion. Every word you speak seems to dig you deeper into a hole. Your heart races, your thoughts scatter, and despite saying everything you wanted to say, you walk away feeling completely defeated. Sound familiar? What if I told you that this entire scenario represents a fundamental misunderstanding of where true power actually lies? That Friedrich Nietzsche, one of history's most profound thinkers, discovered a psychological principle so powerful it can make you virtually unbeatable in any social dynamic. Today, we're exploring the transformative art of strategic silence. Not as withdrawal, but as the ultimate expression of inner sovereignty. I'm here to guide you through philosophical insights that can genuinely transform how you navigate the world. If this resonates with you, consider subscribing. We're building a community of conscious individuals committed to genuine self-mastery. Today's journey takes us into one of psychology's most counterintuitive truths. That real power often manifests not in our words, but in our deliberate choice to remain silent. This isn't about becoming passive or submissive. This is about discovering a form of psychological authority that Nietzsche understood centuries before modern neuroscience caught up. Before we dive deep, let me ask you to pause and reflect on your own patterns. When was the last time you felt compelled to defend yourself, to prove your point, to make someone understand your perspective? Hold that feeling in awareness. We'll return to it. Let's begin with a fundamental question that Nietzsche grappled with throughout his work. Why do we feel such an urgent need to respond to every provocation, every criticism, every challenge to our beliefs? The answer reveals something profound about human psychology. We've been conditioned through family dynamics, educational systems, social media culture, to believe that silence equals weakness. That not defending ourselves is tantamount to surrendering. We've internalized the notion that every conversation is a battlefield, where we must emerge victorious through the force of our arguments. But Nietzsche saw through this illusion with devastating clarity. In his notebooks, he wrote that those who talk the most often reveal the most about their deepest insecurities. The person who desperately needs to convince others is already operating from a position of psychological weakness. Think about this for a moment. When you feel that burning compulsion to justify your position, what's really happening beneath the surface? You're unconsciously admitting that other people's opinions have power over your inner state. You're seeking external validation for internal truths. This creates what I call the explanation trap. The more you explain, the more you diminish your authority. Every justification signals that you're unsure of your own position. Every defensive response reveals exactly where your psychological vulnerabilities lie. Nietzsche understood that most human arguments aren't philosophical pursuits of truth. They're emotional battles for ego preservation. And once you enter that battlefield, you've already accepted someone else's rules of engagement. This brings us to one of Nietzsche's most penetrating insights, the concept of herd morality. This isn't simply about being people pleasers. It's about how our entire sense of self becomes dependent on external recognition and approval. Herd morality operates on a simple but devastating premise. I am only as valuable as others perceive me to be. This creates a psychological prison where we constantly feel compelled to defend, explain, and justify our existence to others. We become reactive beings, shaped by the expectations and judgments of everyone around us. But here's what Nietzsche understood that transforms everything. This need for validation is precisely what keeps us psychologically weak. Every time you feel compelled to argue your point, you're unconsciously broadcasting that your sense of worth depends on changing someone else's mind. Take a moment to observe this pattern in your own life. Notice how different you feel when someone disagrees with you versus when they validate your perspective. That emotional fluctuation, that's the herd morality operating within your psyche. The truly psychologically powerful individual, what Nietzsche called the Bermensch, transcends this need entirely. They don't derive their sense of worth from winning arguments or changing minds. words, their power flows from an unshakable inner foundation that requires no external validation whatsoever. This is why strategic silence is so psychologically devastating to those trapped in herd morality. When you refuse to engage in their validation-seeking games, you force them to confront the emptiness of their own position. Your silence becomes a mirror reflecting their desperate need for approval. Let's explore Nietzsche's most transformative concept, the Übermensch, often translated as overman or superhuman. This isn't about becoming superior to others in an arrogant sense. It's about transcending your own psychological limitations, your own desperate need for approval, your own reactive patterns. The Übermensch doesn't live by reacting to the world. Instead, they shape reality through their mere presence. And remarkably, this transformation often occurs in complete silence. Consider these two responses to harsh criticism. Response A: that's completely wrong. Let me explain why you're misunderstanding this. You see, what actually happened was, followed by lengthy justification, rising voice, defensive body language. Response B: a calm, steady gaze. A slight nod of acknowledgement, thoughtful silence. Then perhaps a simple "I hear you" before redirecting attention elsewhere. Which response suggests greater inner strength? Which one maintains dignity while creating psychological intrigue? Which one leaves you curious about what the person is really thinking? The Übermensch understands that silence isn't empty. It's concentrated presence. It's not absence, it's fullness. While others exhaust themselves with explanations and justifications. The silent observer accumulates psychological power through careful attention and strategic restraint. This silence carries what I call gravitational authority. Just as massive objects bend space-time around them, individuals who've mastered their inner landscape bend social dynamics through their psychological presence alone. Here's where ancient wisdom meets modern science. When you choose not to react, you're not just protecting your own energy. You're creating a profound neurological effect in the other person's brain. Silence acts like a psychological mirror. In the absence of your expected response, people are forced to confront their own words, their own motivations, their own internal landscape. And for many people, this confrontation is deeply uncomfortable. Modern neuroscience confirms what Nietzsche intuited centuries ago. When we don't receive the expected response in social interactions, our brain's threat detection system activates. The amygdala, our ancient fear center, begins firing warning signals. The other person's mind automatically starts filling the silence with projections. Why isn't he responding? Does he think I'm stupid? Did I reveal too much? Is he judging me? Does he see through my facade? This internal spiral happens automatically, without conscious control. Your silence becomes a catalyst for their self-examination, their insecurities, their hidden fears, even though you've said absolutely nothing. But here's the crucial distinction. This effect only works when your silence emanates from genuine inner strength, not from fear or avoidance. There's a qualitative difference between the silence of psychological sovereignty and the silence of intimidation. One carries the energy of choice, presence, and inner fullness. The other carries the energy of withdrawal, fear, and emotional scarcity. People can sense this difference intuitively, even if they can't articulate it. Now, let's explore the practical dimensions of this philosophy. How do you transform silence from a passive state into an active tool of psychological influence? Pillar 1. The sacred pause before responding to any provocation. Create space. Even 3 seconds of conscious silence can completely transform the dynamics of an interaction. This pause signals that you're not operating from reactivity. You're making deliberate choices about your energy expenditure. Practice this. When someone says something that triggers your defensive mechanisms, count slowly to 5 in your mind before responding. Notice what happens in that space, both within your own nervous system and in the other person's energy. Pillar 2. Observational intelligence. Instead of preparing your next argument while others speak, practice what I call psychological reconnaissance. Notice their tone, their body language, their emotional undertones, their unconscious reveals about their deeper motivations and insecurities. This isn't about gathering ammunition for attack. It's about understanding the complete psychological landscape of the interaction. This information will serve your wisdom far better than any clever comeback. Pillar 3. Strategic restraint. Learn to recognize when not responding carries more psychological impact than responding. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply acknowledge what someone has said with a nod. Let the silence hang in the air, and then redirect the conversation entirely. This requires incredible inner discipline because every conditioned part of you will want to defend, explain, or justify. But your restraint becomes a demonstration of mastery that speaks louder than words. Pillar 4. Presence over performance. Focus on being rather than doing. Instead of trying to impress others with your verbal cleverness, develop such solid inner authority that your mere presence commands respect and curiosity. This means cultivating what Nietzsche called self-reverence, a deep respect for your own inner wisdom that doesn't require external validation to maintain its strength. But we must address a crucial distinction that separates genuine power from psychological self-betrayal. Not all silence carries strength. There is a vast difference between the silence of sovereignty and the silence of suppression. Nietzsche would be deeply disturbed by silence that stems from fear, from people-pleasing, from the desperate desire to avoid conflict at any cost. This type of silence isn't wisdom. It's cowardice disguised as virtue. If you find yourself staying quiet because you're afraid of others' reactions, because you don't want to rock the boat, or because you've been conditioned to believe that your voice doesn't matter, then you're not embodying psychological strength. You're trapped in what Nietzsche called slave morality, the value system that keeps the psychologically weak comfortable in their submission. The difference lies in your internal experience. Powerful silence flows from choice, from a place of abundant inner resources, from genuine self-respect. Submissive silence stems from fear, scarcity thinking, and self-doubt. Here's the litmus test. When you remain silent, are you choosing this response from a position of strength and conscious intention? Or are you avoiding confrontation because you're afraid of the emotional consequences? Your honest answer reveals whether you're moving towards psychological sovereignty or deeper into emotional dependency. The journey from herd mentality to Bermensch consciousness is fundamentally about shifting from reactive to creative modes of being. Instead of responding to the world's provocations, you begin shaping reality through your intentional presence. This transformation requires what Nietzsche called becoming who you are, a process of excavating your authentic nature from beneath layers of social conditioning, family expectations, and cultural programming. Consider how this shift changes every interaction. In reactive mode, your energy flows outward toward others, seeking their approval and validation. You're constantly defending, explaining, justifying. Your sense of self depends on others' responses to you. In creative mode, your energy flows inward first, connecting with your own inner wisdom and values. From this centered place, you choose consciously how and when to engage with others. Your sense of self remains stable, regardless of external reactions. The reactive person needs others to understand them. The creative person understands themselves so completely that others' comprehension becomes optional rather than necessary. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent to others' feelings or perspectives. It means developing such psychological resilience that you can engage authentically without your emotional stability depending on the outcome. As you develop this capacity for strategic silence, you'll notice profound changes in how others respond to you. People become more careful with their words in your presence. They seek your opinion precisely because you don't offer it freely. They project wisdom and depth onto you, even when you're simply being attentively quiet. This isn't manipulation. It's the natural result of operating from genuine inner strength. When you're no longer desperately seeking validation, others sense your psychological self-sufficiency and are naturally drawn to it. You'll also discover that people who used to drain your energy through endless arguments and drama will either transform their behavior around you or gradually fade from your life. Your new energy signature simply won't attract the same type of psychological dynamics. But perhaps most importantly, you'll find yourself accessing deeper levels of creativity, intuition, and wisdom. When you're not constantly reacting to external stimuli, you create space for your own inner voice to emerge with clarity and power. This is what Nietzsche meant by amor fati, love of fate. Instead of resisting challenging interactions, you welcome them as opportunities to strengthen your capacity for non-reactive presence. Let's ground this philosophy in concrete practices you can implement immediately. Daily reflection practice each evening. Review your interactions from the day. Notice when you felt compelled to defend or explain yourself. What triggered that impulse? What would have happened if you had chosen silence instead? The 3-breath response. Before reacting to any provocation, take 3 conscious breaths. Use this time to connect with your inner stability rather than immediately responding from emotional reactivity. Curious observation when others are speaking emotionally. Practice deep listening without formulating responses. Notice their body language, tone, and the emotions beneath their words. This develops your psychological intelligence while keeping you centered. Energy audit. Pay attention to how different types of interactions affect your energy levels. Notice which conversations leave you feeling drained versus energized. This awareness helps you make more conscious choices about engagement. Boundary setting through presence instead of explaining your boundaries verbally. Practice maintaining them through your energy and attention. When someone crosses a line, your shift in presence often communicates more effectively than explanations. But here's what Nietzsche ultimately understood. The goal isn't to defeat others through silence. The goal is to transcend the entire game of psychological dominance and submission. The Bermensch doesn't seek to control others. They've mastered themselves so completely that they no longer need external validation or conquest. Their silence isn't a weapon used against others. It's a sanctuary that protects their inner wisdom and creative potential. This shift in perspective changes everything. Instead of using silence to win interactions, you use it to remain connected to your authentic self. Instead of trying to control how others perceive you, you focus on aligning with your deepest values and insights. This is what depth psychology calls individuation, the process of becoming a psychologically whole and self-directed individual. It's not about isolation or superiority. It's about developing such inner strength that you can engage with others from a place of genuine generosity rather than neediness. When you no longer require others' validation to feel worthy, you're free to offer your authentic presence as a gift rather than using it as a bargaining chip for approval. Understanding these concepts intellectually is only the beginning. Real transformation happens through consistent practice and honest self-observation. Start with small experiments. In your next conversation, notice your impulse to defend or explain yourself. Instead of automatically responding, pause for just 3 seconds. Notice what happens in that space, both within your own nervous system and in the other person's energy. Pay careful attention to the quality of your silence. Is it coming from fear or from strength? From avoidance or from conscious choice? This internal awareness is crucial for developing authentic psychological power. Practice what Nietzsche called eternal recurrence, living as if each moment would repeat infinitely. This perspective helps you choose responses that align with your highest values rather than your immediate emotional impulses. Remember, this journey requires patience with yourself. You're unwinding years of conditioning and developing entirely new neural pathways. Honor the process rather than demanding immediate perfection. We return to where we started, but with transformed understanding. The paradox of silent power reveals that by saying less, we often communicate more profoundly. By needing less external validation, we generate more authentic inner authority. By reacting less to others' provocations, we become more genuinely influential in every interaction. This isn't about becoming cold or disconnected. It's about developing such a rich inner life that you no longer need others to fill your psychological emptiness. You become genuinely generous in your silence, not withholding your thoughts as punishment, but offering your calm presence as a gift. Your unavailability to drama becomes availability to wisdom. Your refusal to engage in psychological games becomes an invitation for others to transcend them as well. If this exploration has resonated with you, I invite you to implement one practice from today's discussion over the next week. Notice what shifts when you approach even one interaction from this place of conscious silence rather than automatic reactivity. Subscribe if you're ready to continue this journey of psychological transformation. I like this video if it offered you a new perspective on your own inner authority. And share your insights in the comments. I read every one and often respond. Remember, true strength whispers. Wisdom rarely needs to raise its voice, and the most powerful presence often speaks through conscious, intentional silence. Until next time, practice the art of inner sovereignty. Your future self will thank you for the courage to transcend the noise and discover the profound power that lies within conscious stillness.